everyone, this is Sarah with SewingPartsOnline.com, and we are back with our beginner's guide to sewing, and we're going to continue with our theme of alterations. Now last week we learned how to shorten a pant hem. This week we're going to learn how to lengthen some hems. Now the thing about shortening pant hems, that's easy. I mean, you can do 2 inches, you can do 5 inches, whatever. But when you're lengthening hems, you're kind of limited to the fabric that you already have on the garment. So it's a little bit trickier, but I promise with these few steps, you'll have it down in no time. Oh, another thing about this technique, this is called putting facing in a hem, and the reason it's so good is because it translates to formal wear, and you can put it in casual wear. You can do it as just a fun decorative touch. It works for menswear and women's wear, so you can use it in a variety of different projects. Anywho, without further ado, let's learn to make some tall people very happy and lengthen a hem. Basically, we're going to add a tiny lining to the pant cuff. So first, let's rip out the original blind hem. So now it looks like we can get a good extra inch out of these pants, which means we're going to need some kind of lining fabric. This is just some cheap, lightweight China silk lining, very typical in dress wear. I didn't have any black on hand, so I just grabbed some dark blue scraps. The first thing you need to do is make sure to put the fabric on grain, which we learned all about in episode 3. This fabric frays easily, so I'll just pull out some of the fibers to find my grain line and cut along the void. Again, I'll do this along the length and the width of the fabric. Now we'll be cutting a long rectangle out of this piece of fabric. So you want to measure the width of your pant cuff, times it by 2, and add about 1/2 inch. Mine equals 17.5 inches long total. I'll cut the piece about 4.5 inches wide. However, you can make it wider if you like. That's not going to be my finished lining. It's just easier for me to work with for the time being, just to cut it all out. So just know if you want yours to be wider, you need to account for a seam allowance. Head to your sewing machine and place the right side of the lining to the right side of your pant fabric. I recommend removing the storage unit to take advantage of the free arm sewing machine. Set yourself up for a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Start your stitch 1/4 inch into the seam, meaning that you don't want to start your first stitch on that very edge of the lining fabric, if that makes any sense at all. So all the way around, and stop 1/4 inch from the end of the fabric. Now just pin up that remaining raw edge. You might want to reinstall your storage unit for this part. It's just easier to sew when you have a full bed. Using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sew those 2 fabric pieces together. It kind of completes your lining circle. And you'll come up to the bottom stitches. Don't sew across those, just stop and back stitch as close as you can. Go ahead and carefully set the seam with your iron and press out as much of the original hem as you can. If you have delicate fabric, it's best to use a press cloth. So you want to pin the lining and the new hem so that none of that lining fabric can be seen on the right side of the pants. I kind of use my fingers to roll and press the fabric in place. Get out your iron again and press. Now measure 1 inch up from the hem and mark with chalk. Now we'll mark 5/8 of an inch from the first line marking. I've placed my pins horizontally along the first chalk line to make this process a little faster. I just use the width of my 5-in-1 seam gauge to quickly measure that 5/8 of an inch. And I just cut along that line. Again, your lining can be longer or shorter. I've just found that this is the easiest way for my brain to kind of do the steps. Now fold that raw edge under and pin. Grab a hand sewing needle and some thread that matches your pants. We're going to hand sew an invisible slip stitch to attach the lining in place. This way, the stitches won't be seen on the front of your pants. You can do a blind hem stitch on your sewing machine if you'd like, but I just feel this way is less frustrating overall. And that's all there is to it. You can see these pants already have some black lining up here at the top, so ideally I would use that same color. And this is what it looks like from the outside. I still need to starch out that original hemline, but as you can see, I get a fair bit of extra length and it looks pretty pro. And once you've done this a time or two, you'll be able to repeat it in about 10 to 15 minutes tops. The thing about alterations is you either love it or you hate it, but in the long run, it does save you money by doing your own alterations, and you can actually make money by doing alterations. People always need their pants shortened, their dresses shortened or lengthened, and you can really bring in a good bit of income just doing it in your home, which is great. So I hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them in the comment section below, or just come and hang out with our sewing community on sewingpartsonline.com, on facebook.com/sewingpartsonline, on Twitter @sewingparts, Google+, Pinterest, or Instagram. We're everywhere, and be sure to subscribe for the next video. Next time we will be learning how to take in and let out side seams.